Hello and welcome to the tutorial of West and East Flow of Knowledge. This video is brought to you by the University of Languages and International Studies. In this tutorial, we'll take a closer look at the mutual influences in educational philosophies and cultures of learning between Eastern and Western societies. It is hoped that after this lesson, you can reflect better on your teaching approaches, the success that you have achieved when applying imported methodology in your classrooms, and at the same time, revise what advantages you have at hand about your own culture to carry out culturally appropriate pedagogy. It is also expected that you can develop multiple perspectives on the globalization and localization of language education and mediate any Western superiority or Eastern inferiority complex. Now let us begin. First of all, let's see what nations have found about their people's academic achievements towards the end of the 20th century and at the beginning of the 21st century. The database of test results from prestigious international assessment organizations has highlighted comparatively higher levels of educational performance in a number of Eastern countries, including both Asian and European nations. For example, PISA, or the Program for International Students Assessment, is highly respected across the globe and enables politicians and policymakers to assess how different countries' education systems compare. So, the Paris-based Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, conducted a major study of 65 countries in 2009 using the PISA test results in numeracy, literacy, and science of around 470,000 15-year-olds across the world. The data showed that the UK was slipping down world education rankings in maths, reading, and science, and had been overtaken by the Pacific Rim, Eastern Europe, Japan, and South Korea. Similarly, the most recent PISA results from 2015 placed the US an unimpressive 38th out of 71 countries in math and 24th in science. The top results belong to a number of Asian and Eastern European nations. In this chart, Vietnam even significantly outperformed the US in science tests to win the 8th place of all. Besides PISA test results, the US has also concerned about the comparative decline in performance of American children as they progress through school. In the most recent results of the National Assessment of Education Progress from 2015, average math scores for 4th and 8th graders started to fall in 2007 compared to what they were from 1990 to 2005. Despite their leading status in scientific advancements and economic power, such Western countries like the UK and the US have experienced declination in their people's academic performance compared to the East. In an attempt to explain the phenomenon, politicians in the UK argue that it is impossible that children in successful countries are born more able than British children. There are things about the British education system and/or the culture that need to be changed. Meanwhile, in the US in the 1990s, Harold Stevenson and his colleagues found out significant differences in levels of attainment and contrasting attitudes to the education and upbringing of children on the part of teachers and parents in the United States, Taiwan, Japan, and China. So, in reality, what has been happening is we, teachers from the East look to the West with leading scientific and economic advancements and excellent individuals and borrow their educational pedagogies. At the same time, educationalists from the West look to the East with high academic achievers and think the Eastern pedagogies should be their solutions. Ironically, the inappropriateness of attempting to import pedagogies directly from other societies with different cultures has becoming increasingly recognized during the past 20 years. Educators and researchers are increasingly accepting that culture and education cannot be considered as separate and independent factors. In a series of studies during the second half of the 1990s, Julian Elliott and her colleagues sought to highlight a number of important factors that helped to explain the superior educational performance of Russian children compared to their peers in England and the US. Many of these are similar to those reported by Stevenson and colleagues about Asian and US differences. Key elements of the Western context included excessive and unrealistic self-perceptions about academic performance, poor levels of classroom behavior, negative peer influences, and a lower emphasis on the value of education. In the first place, the degree of satisfaction toward academic performance has great influence on students' learning results. Studies have shown that while positive levels of self-confidence could be desirable, it should also be recognized that inappropriate levels of high confidence may result in arrogance and reduce students' awareness of the need to work hard. In the case of American and British children in related studies, they tended to have comparatively high academic self-perceptions and confidence, and believe that their teachers and parents perceived them highly and more satisfied with their school achievements. This also caused the belief that students' work at school was enough. In contrast, parents from Russia and many Asian countries placed more emphasis on the importance of practice at home and considered the home situation as far more important for raising academic performance. Furthermore, Eastern children also underestimated the ratings of their performance than their teachers actually provided. Unlike American and British teachers and parents, the Asian teachers and parents seem to use praise very limitedly and only when performance is exceptional. This is partly because being modest is an essential cultural value that is meant to be cultivated in each individual. Therefore, the best way to nurture self-development is not by having a child surrounded by compliments and praises, but by criticism and higher expectation. Like the Vietnamese saying, yêu cho roi cho vọt, ghét cho ngọt cho bùi. Cultural beliefs about the traits or quality for success and failure are the second explanation for the different educational performance across cultures. For example, different cultures have different perceptions of hard work. Researchers also found that the English and American children appear to emphasize the importance of effort and think that they were working to the best of their ability, so they deserve to get good grades, even though this kind of effort appeared to be far less demanding than that of the Russian children. Meanwhile, in the Russian classroom, the belief was that working hard was unlikely to result in high achievement unless the student also has natural ability. Therefore, a student hardly got high scores only through showing that he is hardworking. In contrast, In the less demanding American classroom, a student could get high grade if he showed his effort. Another quality that differentiates academic achievements across cultures is the different perceptions of social approval. In Asia, looking up to hardworking people with academic success and following their examples are highly appreciated and encouraged. On the contrary, students in England and the US were discouraged in their studies by a strong desire for peer approval. Those with high intellectual capacity or show excessive academic enthusiasm are easily excluded, bullied, or called names such as nerd or nerdy, because they are considered as boring and unfashionable. The third explanation for the West and East differences in academic performance can be found in how these cultures view the value of education and being educated. In perceptions, both Western and Eastern acknowledge the instrumental worth of education in that it should help them succeed economically in adult life. However, researchers have found the differences between the stated opinions and actual behaviors of the English and American students, and related research has also documented little evidence of significant investment in academic success in this population. Moreover, the belief that going to school is to get a job and earn money as adults causes young people in the UK and US to feel that what they are doing now is not important. All the rewards seem to be somewhere in the future. In these societies, it seems that the primary purpose of attending school for many children is not to achieve high educational standard. Instead, social and sporting success has long represented the most important achievement for many students. Researchers have also documented large-scale parental disengagement from schooling and acceptance of poor grades, a peer culture that is often disrespectful of academic excellence, and student lifestyles in which a high proportion of time outside of school involves leisure activities, socializing, and too much time is spent on part-time employment. In contrast, the investigated Russian, Asian American, and Asian students prioritized the role of education as a means of self-improvement. Scholarship has been widely seen as a means to become knowledgeable and cultured. For these students, being educated is more than important, even more than making money, and it may be the aim of life. The Vietnamese proverb Ngọc bất trắc bất thành khí, nhân bất học bất chi lý reflects this belief very well. The aim of student life is not merely becoming adults and getting by with a job and enjoying leisure activities. Humans need to be educated to know right from wrong, to become shining gems, not rolling rocks. The Asian high appreciation of education and being educated is also reflected in the people's appreciation and respect for ancient scholars and intellectual ancestors like Master Confucius of China and Master Chu Van An of Vietnam, and many more. The last explanation for West and East dissimilar educational performance is attributed to cultural differences in peer influences and classroom behaviors. It has been reported in international research since the beginning of the 21st century that Eastern children are well-mannered, attentive, and industrious, have strong motivation to learn and a readiness to serve their society. Their relationships with parents, teachers, and upbringers are those of respectful but affectionate. Unlike reported U.S. teachers who are more likely to experience students' disruptive behaviors, The Eastern teachers normally do not have to wait long for students to settle down when the lessons begin. Besides, socialization practices in peer group seems more responsive to adult values and standards of behavior. Those high-achieving and highly motivated students who do not appear to be arrogant nor fail to be supportive are generally respected and admired. As the Vietnamese proverb says, học thầy không tài học bạc. In contrast, Western students do not seem to like to be called nerds because being academically enthusiastic is unpopular and boring and opens the door to bullying and harassment. The reluctance to show high achievement or excessive effort discourages these students' motivation and effort. Furthermore, studied American peer groups are more likely to encourage disapproved behaviors that are oppositional to adult norms or values. In such societies, the fear of being teased for showing an interest in school work and following adults' teaching is a significant inhibiting factor on the students' school performance and classroom behaviors. Well, we have talked a lot about how academically stronger we are than the West. I'm curious about how you feel right now about yourself, your children, and students. You're proud, aren't you? It turns out that the negative stereotypes about students in the West that we have seen in Hollywood movies and the academic strengths of Eastern students that have been praised across generations are greatly confirmed in research. But what else do we see in reality? We see the favoritism for the West and a strong sense of Western superiority in a large number of Eastern people. In fact, the West still outperforms the East in economy and applied sciences. How can we explain this paradox? It's partly due to the phenomenon of brain drain, as talented people are provided with better chances and rewards if working for the West. It's also because of the transparency in the West's job and welfare policies. The fact that the West may not value education and being educated as the East does not necessarily mean that they don't value work and serious working manners. The competitive and individualistic views toward learning and working can also serve as motivation in producing high-quality products. So, apparently, both the West and the East need to learn from each other. Firstly, in terms of satisfactions, the Western parents and teachers should have higher standards and expectations of their children so the kids could become more realistic in self-evaluation and have more motivation at school. Meanwhile, the Eastern parents and teachers should express more explicit appreciation of their children's effort and achievements. Only by appropriately acknowledging the student's success with rewarding incentives can our society reduce the impacts of brain drain. Secondly, both the West and the East should revise their perceptions of requisite traits or quality for success or failure. The Western educational philosophies need to alter their approach toward incentives for school effort. Rewards should be given when effort and study outcomes are relevant, not just display of effort itself. In order to help their students become more academically enthusiastic, the Western curricula need to place more emphasis on academic activities and values. On the other hand, the Eastern curricula need to be more balanced with promotion of both academic and extracurricular activities. If the students from the East wish their academic achievements to become applicable in real life, more attention needs to be given to sports, socialization, and vocation. This will be good for the practicality of knowledge and students' soft skills development. Thirdly, in respect of the value of education and being educated, the Western people need to cultivate more positive attitude to learning and scholarship. They need to make their kids understand that education is a demanding process which involves a lot of effort, discipline, endurance of hardship, humility, concentration, and perseverance. Learning is not necessarily always fun. In the meantime, the East should also see the importance of personal choice and individual agency in what subjects to major in and what job to pursue. Education needs to be practical and suitable for individual ability so as to serve people best in their adult work life. Unrealistic expectations from parents and teachers can also be harmful to students' motivation. Finally, both the West and the East need to revise their peer culture. Western adults should educate their kids to respect the authority and knowledge of parents and teachers. At the same time, the family should be more supportive and involved in the children's learning process. A supportive peer culture which encourages learning and employs high-achieving peers as important role models should be established and sustained. On the other hand, the Eastern adults should also reduce the comparison between individual kids in academic performance. Being constantly compared with higher achievers can gradually reduce students' self-confidence and learning motivation, even can trigger oppositional behaviors to adult norms and values. And last but not least, both the West and the East should take care of a strong sense of group identity among their people, the kind of group identity where desires of individual are subordinated to the needs of the class group in particular and of the community in general. Alright, such a long tutorial, isn't it? I hope that this lesson has provided you with informative insights into the culture of learning across the world. The practice of borrowing pedagogical solutions from another culture is not unusual, but it can be effective only when it is applied appropriately in accordance with the local culture. Through this lesson, I hope you can reinforce and promote our strengths in culture of learning in your English classrooms. It's time to say goodbye and thank you for watching.